Hello FlossTube, this is LaDonna with Sampling of Memories. If you are new to my channel, thank you for stopping by. If you are someone who has visited with me before, thank you for stopping by yet again. I do appreciate it, and I cannot believe that I'm actually able to do another FlossTube less than a week than I did my last one, which never happens. I'm done with my classes right now, which is good. Most of my Christmas shopping is done, which is good. And so now I'm just kind of in the home stretch for a few weeks until classes start back up again. So I'm taking full advantage of it. So one of the things that I thought I would talk about, and I know I've referenced it previously several times, is being a member of a needlework guild. So a lot of people now, they're going to retreats, they're getting together in their areas, and one of the things that I have always enjoyed is my membership in the Loudoun Sampler Guild, which we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary in 2021. So that's a long time. The guild was founded, several people were the initial folks that founded the Loudoun Sampler Guild, but I think the main force behind it was Betty Whiting Fleming, who was a force of nature. We'll just leave it at that. She was a person who appreciated history. She started the Loudoun Museum, which actually has a pretty significant needlework collection. A lot of people don't know that unless you are local, and the reason it is a pretty extensive collection is because of Betty. She obviously had a love of textiles. She loved antique schoolgirl samplers, and she was able to persuade quite a few of the local families to pass their samplers that they had inherited along to the Loudoun Museum, which is now has, I'm not really sure how many they have in their collection. I do believe if you go online, you can search for some of the samplers. She documented them, cataloged them. She was the museum curator. She interacted quite a bit with Betty Ring, who is a pretty well-known sampler lover, schoolgirl sampler lover. She did the 2-volume book, Girlhood Embroidery, and I'll put the link down. If you can find those, they're out of print. I highly recommend, if you come across them, to grab them. They're just beautiful. If you love samplers, if you love needlework, they're just beautiful to look at. Betty Ring did a wonderful job of documenting what she knew about the samplers, and it's just an amazing book. So you definitely pick that one up if you can. I digress. So Betty was a driving force behind the guild, and pretty much stayed involved until probably her last year, when she her health started to decline, and ultimately passing away. But her legacy lives on in the guild, along with many other ladies that I've gotten to know over the years who are no longer with us. So that's one of the things with joining the EGA, which is the Embroidery Guild of America, or your local guild. There's several, and I will do some research and I'll put some links down to some of the ones that I come across. I don't want to name it. They're popping in my head, but I would rather just go ahead and list all of that information down below if you're interested. But going to a guild, you learn so much. Just like if a lot of you are starting to get together and meet and have, just a little gathering, or going to some of the retreats, the information that you learn from other stitchers, you learn lots of tips and tricks and how to do certain stitches, because even though we have pretty extensive documentation for some of the stitches, sometimes you just have to see how it's done, or maybe someone has figured out a trick that you're not going to learn in the book. Maybe you're left-handed and most of the instructions are usually written for someone who's right-handed. So if you meet a fellow stitcher who's left-handed, they may be able to help you learn a stitch, because my understanding is it's pretty much the reverse, but I don't know, don't quote me on that. But anyway, so back to the guild. So our guild is very active. I will say that we have, at this point, we have over 120 members, which is a lot. They don't all come at the same time. We have a lot of members who are associate members. They live outside of the area. They still get the newsletter. They can come whenever they would like to a program or an event, a lecture. But for the most part, I would say the core group that we consistently have anywhere between 60 to 70 that do attend. We do meet once a month, usually the second Saturday of the month. Nice about the guild is you, like I said, you meet other stitchers, but you get exposed to so much. We have went on field trips. We went to Westchester School in Pennsylvania. We have went to the Coverlet Museum in Pennsylvania. We went to the New Jersey sampler exhibit that they had when they released the New Jersey sampler, schoolgirl sampler book. We did that. We have went to Williamsburg. Actually, a few months ago, our field trip was a behind-the-scenes tour that was hosted by Kim Ivy, who is, I believe she's the curator of the textiles. So she started, I mean, their collection is extensive. And so she was pulling out different drawers of, bed coverings from the 1700s and talking about the style and how they would have made the various items. She showed us samplers, quilts, the needlework, sewing tools, pin cushions, needle cases, you name it. So we had a private tour of that collection, and so if you're a member of a group, contact them and see. I'm sure you can work something out. They love to share their information because that's why they gather it. They want people to learn from it. They want people to see it. They want people to enjoy it. So those are some of the things that I've been able to participate in, being a member of the guild. So I know I've talked before about we have our annual retreat, we have lectures, we have classes, workshops, programs, our holiday party, which is what we had today. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm trying to think what else. We've had stash sales. We've also had, when members have passed away, their family doesn't know what to do with all of their needlework supplies and books and things that they've collected. So a couple of the families have donated them to the guild, and we have had basically an estate sale. How's that? We'll call it an estate sale. And we've been able to pick up some things that are out of print, some older books, some things that we may have been very close to the person, and so it has a special place to add into our collections. And part of the two that I'm thinking of that we have done, both of them had donated their money, I believe, to the grant fund. So that's the other thing that the guild is an advocate of, is we want to preserve samplers, needlework, textiles. We want them to be preserved. So if we know that there is a sampler that an organization has, it may be a school that still has it. It could be a small museum somewhere that has it, but they don't have the funds or the budget to actually have it properly conserved, then we will donate money from our grant fund. So somebody will make a motion and we'll all talk about it and use the grant fund to then help them to be able to preserve that history, because that's part of why we meet. We are all sampler lovers. So I know samplers aren't for everyone, but for us in our group, that's what our focus is. We love them. We love learning about the history and the stitches, and just, you know, looking at something that was stitched in the 1700s, 1800s, to me is mind-boggling. And to see how it's still, some of them are in amazing condition and others obviously aren't so much. It just depends on who was the caretaker of those pieces for all of these years. And, you know, most of the time they pass along in families, they're found in attics, but the Guild does open up a lot of educational opportunities, and it also helps you to meet other people that have some of the same interests that you do. And I will say that many of my closest friends now are actually people that I met through the Guild. So it's just nice to have people that you have things in common with like that. Trying to think what else. I think that pretty much, I think I probably described enough to give you an idea of why they are worth seeking out if that's something that interests you. One of the things that, well, I'm going to talk about the holiday party. Actually, no, I'm going to back up a little bit. So when I joined the Guild in 2006, a long time ago, 13 years now, it's hard to believe actually. When I joined, I didn't know anybody, and I was actually, my husband and I went to InStitches in Alexandria, which is one of, actually it is the local needlework shop, and I was speaking with Patricia, who is still there, and she's pretty much, I think, Ellen's right hand at this point. And she asked, when she saw where I lived, she asked me if I'd heard of the Guild. And I had heard of it years ago before we moved away and then came back, but I had never went, because at that time, usually when I went to meetings and such, I was usually the youngest person. So like when we lived in Florida, I went to the EGA meeting, and I mean, I was in my 20s, and most of them, I would say, 60 and up. So it's kind of, you know, when you're younger and you have these interests, it's I know it's harder because you're in a different place in your life. I mean, here I was having babies and starting out while many of them were retired, had grandchildren, and so it's harder, and I understand that. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't initially just go to the Guild. But after I met Patricia and everything, because we're about the same age, I thought, well, I'll try. So I went and ended up joining. And one of the things that is kind of funny now that I look back on it, we had a meeting, and Betty Whiting Filming, she was asking people if they were interested in doing a needlework exhibit. So if you're not familiar with a needlework exhibit, it is an opportunity for people to enter their pieces, and sometimes the shows are judged, sometimes they're not. This one was a judge show, and it gives you the opportunity to, you know, get some feedback on your pieces, but for people to come in and see and be exposed to the art of needlework, because it is an art, whether we want to, you know, really say that or not, it is. So they were asking for volunteers, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like, I'll do it. Every head in that place turned and looked at me, and people were sitting there stitching and everything, and it was like, whew. And then I looked up, and I was thinking, what did I get myself into? What have I done? And so Betty asked me. Now, Betty was from Texas, and she was a straight shooter all the way. Direct as all get out. Have you ever done a needlework exhibit before? And I'm thinking, hecky no. It's the first time I've ever heard of one. I said, well, no. And she goes, well, I'm not able to do all the work. Okay, so she goes, how about if we co-chair? And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I said, it can't be that hard. Famous last words, right? So Betty and I co-chaired. And what I quickly learned was, even though Betty was saying that she couldn't do a lot, it was Betty's baby. So I just got to the point where I would just say, okay, Betty, what do you want me to do? and I just did it. And so that was my first needlework exhibit. And looking back, I realized how fortunate I was to have a co-chair as talented and as well respected within the needlework community as Betty, because I didn't know it at the time, but she was. And her work was impeccable. Her needlework was amazing. She was just an amazing needlewoman, and that's one of the things that I'm very grateful for being a member of the Guild, is that I have been introduced to so many wonderful teachers, designers. We have, oh my goodness, we have so many designers in our Guild that it's just been very helpful for me in my passion that I have for needlework, to have some of the experiences and exposure. So that was how I kind of joined the Guild, and I just went full steam ahead. And then about a year later, they needed someone to be a secretary. They were, because we have board members and then we have committee members. Because there's just no way, you've got to have some control over it, right? So I volunteered to be a secretary. So I was secretary for 2 years, and then I was president for 2 years. And then once you're president, you are past president, to kind of keep the continuity going and give advice and help some of the newer board members in their roles, and why some of the board has made some of the decisions in the past that they did, some of the things that we tried that worked, didn't work, those types of things. So I was past president for 2 years is what I was supposed to be. It could have been 4 if the president had stayed in place for 4 years, because then you're still the past president. But what ended up happening was our president, her husband's health declined, and they moved back home to Texas, and it's too hard to try to do that. So she needed someone to step in. So I was like, well, I'll go ahead and finish out the term, because I'd already been president. I'm still past president, so why not, right? And then once it came time for us to find additional people for the new spots, I went ahead and stayed on. And I stayed on until last May, when my in-laws moved in. And I was just too overwhelmed. It was just too much. And so there were 2 ladies that stepped up to finish my term. And I honestly had not realized how much time I had spent in some of those positions until that last year. And I'm like, okay, something's kind of got to give, right? Plus I went back to school and had my in-laws come. It was just too much. So I stepped aside. I was still the past president. But the 2 that backfilled me they'd been president before, treasurer before, so they knew what to do. And so they just finished their term, and we just today elected or put into place our new board that will start in January. So we have a president, we have a programs person, we have a membership person, a treasurer. Those are the elected positions. I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget one. And then we have our committee positions are hospitality, newsletter, historian, and I think that's it. Oh, blog. We also have a blog. So that's a committee person as well. So they don't have to go through the nomination portion and being approved, that kind of thing. So that gives you a little bit of history as to my involvement in the Guild. And it is a volunteer organization, and I tend to be one that steps up and does things, and that's just kind of how I am. But the benefits it's just, and to watch the guild grow, because that was the other thing that happened while I was president, was we experienced quite a bit of growth, which was very nice to see that we had more people who were interested, more people joining. I think our total membership increased by about 40, which I think is pretty impressive for a local needlework guild. So I'm going to talk about the holiday party. So our holiday party we have at the country club. We used to have it at our meeting location and do potluck. People bring stuff, but we were just getting too big, and that's a lot of work too. So we thought, why don't we have it someplace nice? That way we have room for the vendors to come in, spread out. We have room for however many people want to attend, and so that's what we did. So we transitioned to a local country club, which is right on the Potomac, so it's very nice. So you look out and you see the Potomac, and if you wave, you might be able to see the people in Maryland. Not kidding, I'm just kidding. But it's a beautiful location, and what's nice about it is we can just show up. We don't have to bring, you know, crock pots and whatever else. We just show up. We do have, you know, have a menu to select from ahead of time, so all of that's taken care of. And we do pay for our meal. That's not something that the guild pays for, but which is fine, because, you know, by the time you buy stuff to make in a crock pot and bring it, it's crazy. Plus, when you have 70 people bringing stuff, that's a lot of food. I mean, there was so much food when we did it the other way. So this has worked out better. It's a beautiful, like I said, a beautiful location, and we do have separate rooms for the vendors. So we have quite a few vendors that come, and so this was the first time since we had been at the location that I did not vend. I was like, you know what? I just want to go and enjoy the holiday party and shop. And so I let Kathleen, our hospitality person, know that I'd be more than happy to get there and help her with whatever she needed help with. And so that's what I did. And so part of that was walking around and making sure that the vendors had everything that they needed, water, coffee, and it gave me an opportunity to say hello to everybody and see what they had, and then I could go back and shop later. So that's what I did when I first got there after I had my assignment. And so I walked over, and Kathy Barrick was there. And so I talked to Kathy for a little bit, and as soon as I looked over, I saw, if any of you watch Liz Matthews, her daughter. Hello, Liz is a new FlossTube. I think she's on she's probably almost up to me, actually, because she's a lot more prolific than I am. How's that? I think she's up to maybe 9 or 10, but she's adorable. And so I went over and talked to her for a little while. Her stuff is amazing, so please check her out. I will put all of her information down below. If you have not had an opportunity to check her out yet, please do. She does do one of her floss tubes is with her and her mom, Kathy. So Kathy Barrick, I know all of you know who she is. So check it out. It's Liz is just as talented as her mother. So they all, but their designs are so different, but they still have kind of that same feel. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it was nice to meet her and have an opportunity to talk to her for a few minutes. And then I went around to all the different places and made sure they had their coffee and everything. And let's see here. So, oh, and In Stitches, our local needlework shop, they always come as well. So Ellen and Patricia were there with their stuff. We had the French Needle. We had Barbara Hudson with Queentown Sampler Designs, because she's a member of our guild. Carriage House was there. So those of you who remember Kathy Barrick, she had Carriage House, and then her sister, and I want to say her sister's name is Marty. I'm not sure, so I'm going to have to double check that, and I apologize. But her sister has Carriage House, so she was there with the Carriage House designs. Kathy was there with her designs and her jewelry that she makes. And then her daughter Liz was there with her designs and some of the accessories and everything that she has. And then we have a gentleman who comes, his name is Mike. I'm pretty sure his last name is Sullivan, but I know that's really sad, but I'll have to double check that as well. Frazier, that's the last name, Maggie. His last name is Maggie Frazier, who she's a needleworker as well, and he makes needlework accessories out of wood. So he's a wood turner. And I just saw one, excuse me, I apologize, that I bought a few years ago from him. So these are the pieces that he makes. They're exquisite. The wood is amazing. Everything is smooth. And then this has got holes in it. So you can put, if you have a laying tool, which he makes wood laying tools, you can put, scissors will fit in here if you, some of your smaller scissors. And it's completely solid on the bottom. So you don't have to worry if you have a table and you sit this on, you don't have to worry about your scissors. If they're long enough to poke through, but embroidery scissors should most of them are probably only going to end about here. But he just does amazing work. I have a pin cushion, but it's downstairs that he made, as well as a few other pieces. And I picked up some pieces today from him, and I'll show you those. So I missed these last year, and apparently he had them last year. And so I picked up one, and this is just a straw that he put on it, and you'll see why in a second. So it's an ornament that he made, and it is oh my gosh, I think he said a sea urchin shell. I'm gonna have to double check that too, but I just thought they were beautiful. So he has various sizes. This is probably more of a medium size. There was one there were some that were smaller and then larger. But I'm going to see if my camera can pick it up. Because, it's all the design on the shell itself. They were all different because the colors varied depending on what nature had intended. But he puts the straw on it because you can see how fine that tip is, so that it doesn't get broken and let me just look like I'm poking my eye out there, don't I? But it's I would say that that's as fine as a needle, the tip. And then he has the hanger up here so that you can hang it on your tree. But I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. So I picked that up. And let's see here. I will put his information down below, but he does give us an information sheet, how to take care of the piece, and what to expect from the piece depending on what kind of wood he used. Let's see here. He does have a website, so it is Sylvan Treasures, Sylvan Treasures, and I will, as I said, put that on the drop-down section. So if you want to go check out his website, you can. And then from In Stitches, I stopped by there, and I had to pick this one up. So this is a Blackbird design with Frosty, well, do they call him Frosty? They do, Frosty's Night Out. So I just thought that was adorable, so I picked it up. And they also had some, I guess, ribbon. Yeah, silk ribbon that's been dyed. That I guess these are colors that are being discontinued. So I got some red and white because I thought that would be really cute with some ornaments. And then I got the black. This is actually orange. It looks kind of red in the camera, but it's orange with black around the edges. So I just thought if I do anything that is Halloween related, that would be a good option. And then let me put this back on here so that I don't break the tip. Which I thought it was very ingenious of him to use a paper straw to protect that. So that might be a tip for any of you who have some ornaments that might have a point, or anything that has a point on it like that, to store it. Let's see here. So that's my In Stitches purchases, my Sylvan Treasures, and then the other very well-known designer that's a member of our guild is Betsy Morgan, A Willing Hands. So she is wrapping, I guess she's not going to be teaching after next year. So she has had a lot of pieces, and a lot of her designs featured in inspirations. So they put together a book of her designs, and I believe there's a couple of designs in here that are new, that they included as, I guess, like a retirement or your end of teaching, so that people have her information, since if they still want to teach, or they still want to learn something, since she won't be teaching. But the book, it's inspiration. So if you're familiar with their magazine that they put out, you'll know that it's amazing. The photography is amazing. The stitch diagrams on how to do some of the specialty stitches is amazing. So it's a beautiful book. I haven't had a chance to look all the way through it, but Charlotte Devere, who's a member of our guild, she has the Queen Stitch. She does a lot of amazing design work, very small pieces that she does, and so she had ordered a supply of the books, and so we had the opportunity, if we were interested, to pick one up from her. So I was able, she lives in Pennsylvania, so I was able to get this from her today, which I was happy to do. So I picked that up, and then those are all of my goodies that I bought. Today I was surprised. The guild surprised me. So the two presidents, after they had introduced the new board and everything, they had those who have been involved with the guild as volunteers, who have actually had, a role in some of the different positions that we have. They had them come up to thank them, and I honestly did not expect anything. I was really surprised when they called my name, because I haven't, it's been a while now. I think I got to think about this, but I did. Oh, wow. You know what? It's been almost 2 years, because it was May of 2018. So I was pretty much done at that point. So I haven't, other than being past president, I haven't really had an official role, but they asked me to come up, and that's what made me really start thinking about how long I've actually had a role in the guild, as far as some of the positions. So they had this beautiful box for me, and I was happy with the box until I opened it. So I'm going to show this, because I was just absolutely stunned, and I think they almost had me speechless when they asked me to open this up, because they wanted everyone to see it. So this is an amazing box, and it's one that was made by Mike with Sylvan Treasures, and you can just see his work is amazing. All the different, this is Burled Walnut. Yeah, I like Burled Walnut, which is kind of funny, but I like Burled Walnut. This kind of reminds me of a piece of furniture that I refinished because of the inlays. But he just does amazing work. Is this not just the most amazing piece? So when I saw this, and it just feels, I'm a wood person. I love the feel of wood. That's when I refinish furniture and stuff like that. It's about the wood. So when I looked at the top of the lid, and this is just, now after I've had time to really look at it, it's amazing. This was designed and stitched by Charlotte Devere. So it's actually a cartouche that she designed with the initials of the Sampler Guild. So it's just amazing. And the fabric, or the linen, I'm going to have to ask her what count that is, because it's probably the highest count you can get. That's how fine it is. And she did put her initials and the year that she stitched and designed it. But then they had me open it up. And the box is amazing. The box is just, his work is just amazing. And had me flip it over so that I could see what she put on the back. And so she put the Guild initials there, and then she put my name, and then President Extraordinaire, and that was all I could do not to bawl. I mean, I was just floored that they would take the time that this took to put together to thank me for the years that I've been involved. And the card I didn't read the card until I got home, and when I read the card, I was just floored. Because when you volunteer, you don't volunteer because you expect to be given things, or I don't expect, you know, the recognition or anything like that. When I do things, I do them because I want to, and I want to see things continue on. And I tend to be one that just steps up, and that's just how I am. I always usually end up in some way being the one in charge, and even career-wise, so it's nice to be appreciated, because you really don't do these things or give of your time expecting anything back. Your joy comes from watching other people enjoy the activities that you help coordinate or have a role in. That's, to me, where the joy comes from. So this completely left me stunned and speechless, and will be something that I do treasure for the rest of my life. I mean, this is just absolutely amazing. The thought that went behind it, and the number of folks that had a role in this. It was a coordinated effort, I have learned. But I just thought that with it being the party today, and I know I've referenced the Guild before in my FlossTubes, but I wanted to really expand on why guilds are important and why it's fun to find one. If you don't have one, start one. It's got to start somewhere, but being able to educate and learn, there's no other way that we learn. I mean, we have a lot of books, we have a lot of resources, but I would venture to say that the majority of us, when we were introduced to needlework, quilting, crochet, knitting, whatever the craft is that we use our hands for, we watched someone else doing it. 9 times out of 10, we saw someone doing what we now love, and it fascinated us. It made us ask questions, and it made us want to learn. And usually the person that you saw is usually the person that taught you. So for me, I learned to crochet from one of my aunts. I learned to knit. No one in my family knitted, if you can believe that. So I actually had to I went to In Stitches, and they had knitting classes, and that's how I learned how to knit. Cross stitch, I learned because I was a mother's helper, and my neighbor, when the kids would go to sleep during the summer, she would break out her cross stitch, and I would ask her a gazillion questions about her cross stitch, and she finally gave me a little bit of fabric and some thread and a pattern, and explained to me what to do. And I found her a few years ago and let her know that she probably had no idea when she did that what doors that little lesson that she gave me opened for me over the years. So I encourage you that if you're out by yourself, because I know a lot of people in FlossTube, you are. I mean, that's one of the draws of FlossTube, is that you don't necessarily have a circle. find a circle, make a circle. There are people, just you just have to look, you know, go to your local shop if you have one. Some of the groups that you're in, if you're on a Facebook group, you know, post out there that you're going to meet at the local coffee place or restaurant, and if anyone's interested, to come join you. So I hope that this was helpful and gave you some insight as to what a guild is, what we do, why you may want to find one or join one, and start your own little community, because I will tell you, some of the people that you will meet will end up being some of the closest, dearest friends that you have. So on that, I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday prep as we get through the next couple weeks. And as always, thank you so much for watching. This was a long one. Thank you for hanging in there if you did. And if you like my channel, just click the little like button. I think, what is it? Subscribe. There we go. Click the subscribe button, and if you want to be notified when a new video comes out, you can hit the bell and it will send you a notification. If you have any questions for me, or now I'll tell you, I'm not, you know, I do see the comments, but I am not the speediest at responding. But I will respond. You can always send me an email. You can always find me on Facebook, Instagram, Sampling of Memories for all of them. I try to make it easy. And